The month after Christmas. 'Twas the month after Christmas, and all through the house nothing would fit me, not even a blouse. The cookies I nibbled, the fudge I did taste, all the holiday parties had gone to my waist. When I got on the scales, there arose such a number. When I walked to the store, less a walk than a lumber, I remembered the marvelous meals I prepared, the gravies and sauces and beef nicely rare, the pies and the cakes, the bread and the cheese, and the way I never said, no thank you, please. As I dressed myself in my husband's old shirt and prepared once again to do battle with dirt, I said to myself as only I can, you can't spend the winter disguised as a man. So away with the last of the sour cream dip, get rid of the fruit cake, every cracker and chip. Every last bit of food that I like must be banished till all the additional ounces have vanished. I won't have a cookie, not even a lick. I'll want only to chew on a long celery stick. I won't have hot biscuits or cornbread or pie. I'll munch on a carrot and quietly cry. I'm hungry, I'm lonesome, and life is a bore, but isn't that what January is for? Unable to giggle, no longer a riot. Happy New Year to all, and to all a good diet. Well, it is time for New Year's resolutions again. At the top of the list are exercising to get in shape and dieting to lose weight. There are a lot of weight challenged people. It's not easy being fat. There are a number of problems from being overweight. There are health problems, diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, knee pain. There are practical problems, bending over, fitting in the car, not fitting into certain roller coasters. Growing up, I was often told that each cigarette one smoked shortened life by 30 minutes. I wonder if anyone knows how many minutes a piece of pecan pie cost me. If I spend 30 minutes walking, will I live 30 minutes longer? If I lose weight, will I live longer, or will it just seem like it? Well, why do I overeat? I like food. Why don't I exercise? I don't like it. Well, resolutions about weight loss and exercise are good, but spiritual resolutions are more important. The Apostle Paul writes in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. Keeping resolutions, whether physical or spiritual, requires action. Action is communicated by verbs. This morning, I want us to look at some verbs for the new year. The first verb is stop. There are some behaviors we need to stop. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. We see here the picture, in a sense, of the runner competing, and there is the audience watching. In chapter 11 of Hebrews, we have the list of those known for their faith. And in a sense, I think the picture is that these are watching us as we live the Christian life. Perhaps others who've gone on, faithful Christians, are also watching. But at any rate, we have this great cloud of witnesses. And the writer says you need to throw off everything that hinders, the sin that so easily entangles. The runner who competes doesn't wear things that will entangle him or things that will hinder him. And when we throw off those encumbrances, we then run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, therefore rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. There are just some things in life we need to get rid of. They don't need to be in our life at all. A part of improving is stopping negative behavior. verb we need to use in the new year is start. There are some behaviors we need to start, we need to begin. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 2. Like newborn babies, crave spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. Do we have the desire to grow spiritually? We become very concerned if a baby does not grow physically and mentally. We should be concerned if we're not growing spiritually. Those who become Christians are spiritual babies. They are to grow. We grow by craving the pure spiritual milk, and we grow up in our salvation. And then a third verb is continue. We need to remember that we are a work in progress. Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Here is the Apostle Paul. When we think of Paul, we think of a Christian who had it all together. But he says, really, I don't consider myself to have achieved what I need to spiritually just yet. And so here's what I do. I forget what is behind. I strain toward what is ahead. I think we see here still some more of the athletic language of the runner. Runners don't do well by looking back. They look ahead. They actually strain as they run toward the finish line. And so Paul says, I'm straining toward what is ahead, pressing on toward the goal. The goal spiritually is to win the prize for which God has called him heavenward in Christ Jesus. Now, Paul is not saying I have to do certain things to earn my salvation. No, not at all. But he's saying I am spiritually in a race. I know where the finish line is. I must press on toward that finish line. Someone said, God isn't finished with me yet. And that's a good way to look at it, isn't it? We're not where we need to be spiritually. We have more growth to accomplish. And perhaps the key to keeping resolutions, whether physical or spiritual, is to realize that life is a process of trying to do better. We need to do better, not so that we can boast or be self-sufficient. We do better to become more like what God intended us to be. Through God's grace, we are saved. And as saved people, we should live as saved people. Cromwell wrote in his Bible, if I cease to become better, I shall cease to be good. Well, my personal prayer is that I will grow as a Christian, that I will grow as a minister, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a son-in-law, a brother, a friend, and a citizen. I pray also that I will make changes that will result in good health. I must punctuate that prayer by practice. As this new year begins, we may have different attitudes about making resolutions and setting goals. We may have difficulty stopping. Someone wrote, no resolutions have I made, as folks are wont to do. The ones I made this time last year are just as good as new. It is said that only 1 in 5 people will keep their New Year's resolutions. Someone said the last resolution I made was not to make any more resolutions. It's the only one I've ever kept. Well, before we can change for the better, we must overcome bad behavior. We may have difficulty starting. Charles Schulz, in a Peanuts comic strip, showed a conversation between Lucy and Charlie Brown. Lucy said, life is like a deck chair. Some place it so they can see where they're going, and some place it so they can see where they've been, and some place it so they can see where they are at the present. Charlie Brown replied, I can't even get mine unfolded. Sometimes we feel a bit like Charlie Brown. But we have to ask, what is the first step we need to take to reach our goals? Well, we need to continue our efforts to improve. I think the person was pretty much on target when he said, no one has ever regarded the 1st of January with indifference. There's just something about the change in the year. You know, the stuff I didn't do last year, I'm going to try to do this year. Someone said, make your resolutions so clear and firm that nothing can lure you from your chosen path. Substitute doing for dreaming and achievement for apathy. Does this sermon sound familiar? If you were here on January 1st, 2012, it should. I don't know about you, but I needed this sermon 10 years ago, and I needed it again today. On January 4th, 2012, I weighed 306.6 pounds. My New Year's sermon a few days before was so effective that 6 weeks later I had gained to 311.2 pounds. From 2012 to April 2018, I lost and gained the same 10 pounds over and over. On April 4th, 2018, I weighed 283.4 pounds. Shortly thereafter, that spring, I received 4 stents. I soon began a cardiac exercise program. I lost a few pounds, but then began gaining again. By September of 2020, I was over 284 pounds. At that point, I got serious. By eating less and better, I slowly began to lose weight. On June 16th of this year, I weighed 244.4 pounds, my lowest weight since the early 1990s. It felt good to buy smaller clothes and to be able to button my suit coats. But very soon I began gaining again. The last few months have consisted of losses and gains, with the gains winning. It is now time to get back on the wagon. Well, that's the physical resolution of it. It's an important resolution. Like you, I'm 10 years older than the last time this sermon was preached. We are not only physically older, but spiritually older. Physically, we decline, but spiritually, we can and should continue to grow. Have we been growing spiritually? We are 10 years closer to death. We are 10 years closer to eternity. We need to resolve today and every day to grow spiritually. Change requires action. Action is communicated by verbs. What are your verbs for the new year?